Cool Jobs Podcast.
You're like, where's Saskatoon?
Follow Cool Jobs Podcast on Instagram at Cool Jobs Podcast.
You know 10 NHL players.
The Cool Jobs Podcast is brought to you by Crown Jewel Recruitment.
Please tell me there's video. Is there video of this? If there is, we're going to insert some right here on the podcast.
Oh, we can do it live.
This is the Cool Jobs Podcast with your host, Jonny Jasno.
Here we go. Welcome to the first ever Cool Jobs Podcast. I want to thank our sponsor, Mark Curtis over at Crown Jewel Recruitment. If you're looking for a job, definitely check him out. Mark and his team have opportunities in several industries and segments, whether it's finance, sales, engineering, supply chain, executive, whatever you need. Mark is able to provide the process that identifies top talent that will get you hired. Check him out. CrownJewelRecruitment.com or search on LinkedIn. Our very first guest on the Cool Jobs Podcast. I'd like to welcome the one and only DJ Anchor. How's it going, buddy?
It's going good. So does that mean that I have the coolest job ever then?
Yeah.
Because I'm the first one, yeah?
You're number one.
Yeah, on the list of coolest jobs, yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Yes, for sure. DJ Anchor owns Armed with Harmony Music Services in Saskatoon, but you grew up in small town Saskatchewan, international DJ. Like, it's a crazy story. I want to go through everything that made this happen. Let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up? What was that like? And did you know from a start, like DJ, that was my thing?
No, I think, no, I don't think so. I think, like most small town kids, you're only privy to the world around you. So, you know, and growing up, obviously, in the 80s and 90s, you know, there wasn't this thing called the internet. So it was what was in front of you. It was physically tangible. These kids growing up now with TikTok and the internet, and they can tour Dubai from their own house. I didn't even know like half of these things existed, right? So
you're like, where's Saskatoon?
Yeah, like to me, like I grew up 2.5 hours southeast of Regina, and going to Regina or Brandon or Winnipeg, you know, was a big deal, right?
Right.
It wasn't as global as it is now, or at least your reach wasn't that big. So the world in front of me growing up as a kid was a lot of sports, because my mom and dad were both teachers in the small town I grew up in. So I got to play a ton of sports, and I think like a lot of small town kids in Saskatchewan or the prairies in general, you know, had sights set on big dreams in hockey, and that didn't obviously pan out for me, but you know, everything paves the way for a reason. I use a lot of sports analogies. I do teach some classes, so I do some sports analogies in that, and I think it, you know, competing and playing hard and you know, having respect for other players and all that type of stuff. I think there's a lot of great metaphors that are taught in sports that can apply to just life in general. So
okay, small town Saskatchewan. How many NHL players do you know?
Do I know? Oh,
yeah.
Geez. Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, I would say quite a few. I don't know, like probably like, I don't know, how many is quite a few? 10 maybe? Like,
you know, 10 NHL players.
Yeah, or that I have like, maybe not like, hey buddy, how's it going? But it's like, hey, I played like against that guy or with that guy or
cool.
Or that kind of thing, right? So it's kind of neat to see. And
okay, so growing up, did you like dig through your parents' record collection? Is that where music started for you? How did that connection happen from sports, hockey, everything? Now we're into music.
Yeah, and I think music is always a part of sport, because people needed to get hyped up for, you know, whatever they were doing, or if they were, you know, like the quick bursts, like in, you know, hockey and lacrosse and things like that. It's such a quick game. But then there's also things like, you know, marathon running and cross country and distance running. You needed to put on a longer, you know, mix of music to get you through a 2, 3, 4 hour kind of run. Yeah, music was always prevalent in my house. I don't think, like, my parents didn't play any instruments, but music was always important to them. I feel like there was always kind of like a soundtrack on. My mom, you know, we'd do like a family supper, you know, for Easter or Thanksgiving, and she would, you know, pull out the ABBA record and throw ABBA on the turntable we had at our house. So that was like definitely a fond memory of mine. And then my dad, we would do a lot of road trips, because mom and dad were both teachers, so we had 2 months off in the summer as kids, but our parents didn't work, so we got to travel a ton, and they had really big families, so we were traveling all over Saskatchewan as kids in the summer, camping and just visiting family. But those long road trips always had music with them, so I think that was a big part of why music was kind of important. And then I think the seed, I guess, that probably kicked it all off was growing up in a small town. We did school dances like a sock hop or things like that for our SRC to fundraise for grad and things like that. And kind of in grade 10, I guess, people identified that I had either good taste in music or I had a, big CD collection and things like that. And they said,
the old school CD binder.
Yeah. Or people burning CDs or buying CDs.
Right. Yeah.
So it'd be like, well, why don't, like, instead of hiring a DJ, why don't you just do it? And we can save the money from a DJ and it goes towards grad. So I kind of did that in grade 10 and 11 and grade 12. And I enjoyed it. It was fun. And to see people kind of smiling. So it was maybe born out of necessity more than like a direct passion or link. But then it kind of grew to like, hey, like people appreciate it and people will maybe pay you to do this. So it kind of then took over when I went to university. I was like, oh, I'm in the big city of Regina now. Maybe there's an actual company who has DJs. So I, called a company that had DJs and said,
you cold called them?
Yeah, straight up cold called them.
Like, I want to be a DJ.
I opened the phone book, these things, mythical things. And I just like, hey, that company looks cool. I cold called them and I was like, hey, like I did a little bit of DJing in my hometown. And I think that I might be a good, fit for this. And at the time, I was kind of hanging out. I was actually underage, but hanging out at some nightclubs at 18 and just seeing what the DJs were doing. And they kind of let's like, yeah, just come in. Like, we'll show you kind of what's going on. And then it just blossomed.
Did that blow your mind? The first time you walk into a nightclub and you see these guys playing to whatever, a couple hundred or whatever. Yeah. And you're like, what is happening here? Yeah.
And I think that the biggest thing that blew my mind is that the first place that I kind of really got to go in and see, the DJ who was in there, unbeknownst to me at the time, was like kind of like the guy in Regina at the time. And a lot of people looked up to him because he was just really talented for playing all kinds of genres. Almost kind of like before like the whole mashup thing was cool, I guess. Like, in the mid 2000s, the whole mashup, Nirvana meets AC/DC meets, David Guetta, whatever it is, right? He was, playing everything from like the hip hop, which was cool, like, the J-Lo and Ja Rules and 50 Cents of the early 2000s, but he was playing like 9 Inch Nails and Nickelback and stuff kind of woven in. And it was pretty cool. So, and he was doing vinyl, which I thought was awesome. I'd never seen like real vinyl and turntable. So that again blew my mind.
Right.
And believe it or not, it's not a thing really anymore, but he was DJing at this venue 7 nights a week. So the opportunity for me to kind of go and hang out on like a Tuesday where it maybe wasn't very busy, I could do that. And then this place was also like a restaurant that was open till 4 a.m. on the weekends. So he would start at like, 8 o'clock at night and go till 4 a.m. So oftentimes by default working 7 days in a row and then working long hours. Eventually my time came where like he was sick or he couldn't be there. Or he's like, I just need to take like a pee break or a smoke break. He's like, here, you handle it for 20 minutes or whatever it is. So it kind of was able to weasel my way in a little bit there too.
And so you're playing that first time and you're like, where goes what? Yeah. Don't want to lose the crowd. I guess Tuesday night, I don't think there's a huge crowd dancing, but
but I think you just want to do good and you don't want to mess up. And they're in that live environment, there's definitely like a precedent where like, hey, this is live. So like, you can't just like, oh, I screwed up, start over again. You kind of just have to force yourself to push forward.
So that's all happening in Regina. What were you doing in Regina at the time besides learning from this guy?
Yeah, so I moved to Regina to go to U of R to take kinesiology. So that's the reason why I moved up there. And like my first crazy story, my first weekend, I guess, of being there, I met a girl who then I ended up dating a month later and then marrying. So we've been together for over 20 years. So I met her I met my wife within 7 days of moving to Regina from the small town. So that's pretty wild. But then that same weekend, we had kind of went to a dance that was on campus at U of R. And the dance, I think, ended at midnight because it was like a Luther Christian dance. So it ended kind of early. And they're like, well, we don't really know what to do. We're not really, she was from Prince Albert. So we're like, we're not really from here. Like, what do we do? And someone's like, well, let's go to this kind of bar. It's open till 4 and maybe you'll get in, right? We're like, oh, okay. So we went, and then that's kind of where I kind of met this DJ, and that kind of blown my mind. And then just really evolved from there. So do you have your kinesiology degree? I don't. I'm like, I don't know, I think
You're like, DJing is it? I'm out.
No, I got like three years in, and so I'm about like I think eight classes short or something like that. And I did vow, like when I went into radio, that I would eventually get that degree to hang on my wall, but I think I let that ship sail and for now. But so the other part of the story is that this DJ that I'd met, I'll give him a big shout out. His name's Ren, as he goes by the name of DJ Freaky Willis. He ended up moving to Red Deer, and I think he might still be there right now. Okay. But he had a really, really, really good kind of like radio voice. Like he sounded like he was on the radio without even trying. And it was cool because he was DJing, but also had like a headset on. So he was like not only mixing music, but talking on the mic. Like it was like quite the kind of performance. Like even to this day,
he was the whole package.
Yeah, like even to this day, I really haven't seen a DJ who's like kind of DJing and emceeing his own thing. So like I had a ton of respect for the guy, and he was just so nice. But then somebody was like, "Hey, like you have a pretty good voice, and you can talk and hold a conversation. Like maybe you should think about getting into radio." So again, pretty much cold called the radio station. So I don't know if I was just aggressive or I had a passion. So I called the 104.9 The Wolf in Regina, which is still The Wolf. It's been the same brand for a long time, which is cool to see. So rock station, and got in touch with somebody there, and I was like, "Hey, like here's kind of my quick little story. Like I don't really even want to get paid. I just was told to kind of like get my feet wet, and that's kind of what you have to do." And so the morning show, this is like a whole nother wild story. The morning show ended up bringing me on.
This is all still in Regina right now.
This is all still in Regina. Okay. Yeah. So this is basically like early 2001 to 2004. So
Gotcha.
this is like a 4-year chunk of my life because I did like the 4-year university kind of program. But about a year, not even a month into it, I started kind of the nightclub DJ thing. And then this other company that I was doing some weddings and different events for. But then about a year in, they're like, "You've been hanging around like the club and this thing a while, like you obviously like doing this, you should get into radio." So about a year in, so 2002 is really when I was like, "Hey, maybe I should pursue this in radio." So the morning show at the time, it was Chris and Ballsy, and Ballsy is actually still on the air with Chad.
Oh, cool.
Chris White is now and he's still in radio, he's in sales, as far as I know. And they brought me on for a segment called Wolf Boy Wednesdays because the current program director at the time, Steve Huber, who's a pretty big deal in the radio. He started his own broadcast company. He's in Assiniboia now with his country station there. And they did a very good job of kind of playing up the persona of the wolf. So it was kind of the wolf and Little Red Riding Hood and Little Pig and Wolf Boy and all these characters.
Yeah.
Kind of out of the whole Howard Stern, radio theater, create this story and these personalities and make radio interesting. So they brought me on for this segment every Wednesday called Wolf Boy Wednesday, and they would always have me do some type of crazy stunt. So I was a little bit on the air. They would sometimes give me a cell phone and I would be out doing something. So some of the stunts that they had me do to kind of create laughter or fun or just like a funny bit for a morning show. Like I stood on the busiest street in Regina in like a bikini, and had to bend over and touch my toes. They put me in a garbage can, like an Oscar the Grouch silver garbage can, and rolled me down the steps of Parliament in Regina.
Please tell me there's video. Is there video of this? If there is, we're going to insert some right here on the podcast.
There is actually video. I'll get to that. I'll end with one where I know there's video of.
Okay.
They put me, and at that time, so we're talking like now this is maybe 2003 to 2004. This is where Jackass is really like big, right? Like Steve-O and like it's big, right? They put me in a shopping cart and like pushed me in a skateboarding park ramp with like helmets on and stuff. There's tons of crazy stunts. The final one, and it was kind of a stunt, but I feel like it was kind of a reward. They sent me off to Moose Jaw to go to the South Sask skydive. So they were like, "We're going to kick Wolf Boy out of an airplane." So they legitimately, like an old like flip phone.
Do you have any old school or any previous plane skydiving experience?
Never, ever. So they literally have like a Motorola flip like phone, right? And they duct tape this phone to my hand.
Oh my god!
Because I've never been skydiving before, you can't go by yourself. You have to go tandem. So I have a jump master. So it's a little tiny prop plane. It holds 3 people: the pilot, me, and this other guy, and we have to sit like Jamaican bobsled style, like in this thing, right? Like we're in a bathtub, right? So I'm in the first seat, and my jump master is on my back, and he's basically pinned in. So there's 5 pin points. It's shoulder, shoulder, hip, hip, middle of the back. So he's basically like a human strapped to my back. So we get up to 10,000 feet. We dial on the cell phone, right? So how much
pre did they give you on this before you went in?
Like nothing. Like
there was no classes or nothing.
Oh, I think 30 minutes maybe, right?
Okay.
So like
you're in the plane. You're in the plane.
So we're up 10,000 feet, and all I remember is like this little prop plane. The doors open like kind of like Lamborghini doors, like they kind of like go up, right? So he opens the door up, and there's this like a side piece. It's almost like a really small like crop dusting style plane, right?
Okay, yeah.
But there's a cab, but so he opens the door and he's like, "Okay, you put your foot out first." So I put my foot out, and then he has to follow because we're tied at the hip, right?
Right.
So then he puts his foot out, and then I put my other foot out, and then he puts the other foot. So I'm literally like holding on to the top part of the wing of the plane
on the radio the whole time.
On the radio, so I got one hand on the top, the other hand I'm trying to talk to like the Chris and Ballsy, morning show host. And then he's pretty much like, okay, like it's pretty much like 1, 2, 3, and we just basically like fall back and lean back. Huge rush. I haven't been skydiving since, but I would totally do it again.
Oh man!
But what we didn't think about is, as I'm falling, guess what they can hear in the radio? That's all they could hear. Oh. And then when my jump master pulls the chute, then obviously you kind of fall,
slower,
more gracefully. So then I kind of got to go, back on the air, kind of so to speak, with those guys, and that was it. So there is video of that on the internet somewhere.
I'll find some. We're gonna put it in right here.
Yeah.
Going to curse, choose your words wisely.
They did a little montage, and it was really cool. So I don't know why I've never been skydiving since, but it was super awesome.
Okay, so your time, man. So how long did you last at the station being this wolf boy before you're like, I need to do radio. This is fun.
Yeah, but honestly, like about 2 years, but I wasn't really stressed because it was like 1 day a week. So I would, get to the studio at like 6 or 6:30 in the morning. Their bit would be at like 7:45, and I'd be done by like 8 or 9. So I could still go to my university classes in the morning, right?
And are you still DJing this whole time too?
Yes. So I'm going to university. I'm DJing on the weekends, and then I'm doing this radio bit.
Holy cow.
Kind of all at the same time.
So a couple years pass, and you're like, radio's cool. I want to do this.
Yeah, and then it just basically hit a point where, like, honestly, like, I feel like I want to put on my Gary V hat right now and be like, university was holding me back. That's my heart was like, this is holding me back.
And for some people, university, that's their path, that's their thing, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, and that's cool. And I think my parents encouraged it because they both went to university and were teachers. But it got to a point where I had about a year of university left. I seen the people ahead of me who were graduating. And at that time, there were really no jobs in kinesiology. And the jobs that was like, you're going to be like a rec director in Edson or like, Davidson, Saskatchewan, right? It's like, I don't necessarily see myself there doing that. So I was like,
I'll be honest with you right now. I don't even know what kinesiology is. Yeah. It's a cousin to physiotherapy, right?
Yeah. Kinesiology is basically the study of motion, the study of sport. And there's a few different disciplines. So you can go into like rec and sport and min, where you'd be like a rec director of a town, organize like ball tournaments, hockey tournaments, looking after the grounds, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
There was like a physiotherapy type of like realm where you could get into more of like, chiropractor and actual physiotherapy stuff. There was a kind of new at the time, was more of like a special needs thing. So just dealing with people who have physical, different needs, whether it be wheelchairs or whether it be, spina bifida or things like that, where they just have limited mobility and you work with them on that. And then I think there was one other, it was more like the finances of business. So like, maybe like a long shot of like a sports agent, like the money management kind of side of things, right?
Gotcha.
So there was
Gotcha.
just didn't seem to be anything, and the people that I talked to, it was just a harder time. So I was like, well, I got choices to make, and during this, everybody's kind of in my ear, like, you need to go to radio school, like you need to go to radio school, right? And I was like, well, what's stopping me? So
Yeah, exactly.
checked out a couple radio schools and ended up kind of settling on NAIT in Edmonton.
Okay.
And the weird time is that my sister, who was living in Saskatchewan at the time, had also kind of come to the same conclusion that she was in for kinesiology, and she's 2 years older than me. In they saying that, well, I can't find any jobs in kinesiology, or I'm not, kind of doing that. She also then was, unbeknownst to each other, she also applied to NAIT and got in for interior design. And we honestly just ended up like moving in together, and it was like the weirdest timing. So I moved up from Regina, she moved up from Saskatoon, we moved in together.
Did your girlfriend at the time move with you? Like, how did that all happen? Like, did she come with you and you guys set roots in Edmonton eventually, or no?
Yeah, so she actually studied my kind of third year in this radio or in Regina. She actually moved to Laval for a year because she's a French teacher. So she was kind of gone remotely for a year, in and out a little bit. And then she graduated after the 4 years of that. So I basically moved to Edmonton, and she actually then applied to Lloydminster and got a job teaching in Lloyd, which is the closest thing she could get to Edmonton. So she's been a champ driving kind of back and forth, from Lloydminster to Edmonton to kind of, see me and keep the relationship going. So
I heard nothing but great things from the NAIT broadcast program. I heard it's a 2-year program. I know you went there.
Yeah.
Was it amazing? Was it cool? What was your experience like there?
It was super awesome. Yeah. So it is, a 2-year program. And I think that's what was the thing that more so interested me. I looked at a few other programs, and some were 6 months or 8 months or a year. But the NAIT brand, I guess, and the 2-year program, and the fact that they had a specific radio and television there, really appealed, to me. And I think just going, wow, like Regina is a pretty cool city. Wonder what Edmonton's like. You're young, right? You want to experience things. So I was like, I didn't have, kids or bills or houses or stuff like holding me down. So I just was like, let's go and let's do this. And I think the goal was always to come back to Saskatchewan, because when I moved to Regina, we were like the cannot province. We were like, it was, Lorne Calvert was in government. I didn't know anything about politics at the time, but seems like everybody was leaving Saskatchewan for Alberta jobs.
When I graduated high school, 01, Warman, Saskatchewan, the number one thing is, where are you moving to? Yeah. It was not like, what do you do? The question wasn't, what are you going to do here?
Where are you working here? I'm not. I'm moving. Yeah.
Exactly. So, the number one question. Yeah.
Yeah, so they say everyone's proud to be from there because we've left, here. Yeah. I'm super proud to be back here. And it was crazy, kind of in like from maybe like 2000 to 2006. I feel like it really changed, because when I finished 2 years at NAIT, I was actually excited and proud to be back in Saskatchewan, because I think it was a great time. It was almost like, I feel, maybe it's just my perspective, it was really like the ground floor for a lot of people to start really putting roots in Saskatchewan, because I think in the last 10 or so years it's really blossomed, and a lot of people, you look at like the Vendastas of the world, who are just like, it's like Silicon Prairie, like there's so much to be proud from here and so many great jobs and things like that. So I think I kind of lucked out, from that.
Let's quickly chat about going to Edmonton. You're going to NAIT. Were you still DJing at that time?
Yeah, I was still DJing.
And then how hard was that to break into the Edmonton DJ market? Because there's probably a lot more DJs in Edmonton than there were in Regina. So, and a lot more jobs though too. So like, where do you start? Where do you look? Once again, do you cold call bars? And like, hey, do you need a DJ?
And honestly, luckily I'd met 2 really awesome people. And they're both very unique stories. In their own sense. So this is like, again, early 2000s. I don't know what possessed me to have a DJ website, but I was kind of like, I felt like I was one of the few who had a website back in the day. I think I met a guy, and he was like, yeah, I can, build you something basic. And it was kind of a big deal, to have one. And I was pretty diligent at like updating like what I was currently playing in the bars for like, hip hop or rock or EDM or pop music. And I would put pictures up and things like that. Just, I don't know. At that time, unbeknownst to me, kind of creating a brand to a point, right? So I literally, the day I moved to Edmonton, I'm like, oh, there's this cool music store here called Axe Music. And it's like, I've never seen anything like this before. And someone told me to go check it out. So I go in there and I check it out. And there's like rooms full of speakers and lights and turntables. And I was like, I just felt like people have been keeping the secret from me for years. Because like,
this
coming
is
from
my place.
Small town Saskatchewan, like there was nothing like that. And even in Regina, there was just like, you know, kind of your standard Long and McQuaid, right? Which is still cool, but it was more live music and percussion based. And believe it or not, I actually have long hair again now, but I had like trucker hat. It's tied up here. Right
what do
now,
you got?
So.
Look at that.
It's super long. So it's kind of my two-year COVID grow right now. But I had like the classic Saskatchewan farm boy kind of like trucker mesh back hat, and I had really long kind of like mullety hair. So maybe easy to recognize from a less kind of redneck Alberta. This guy who happened to be he worked at Axe Music. I came up to the till to buy something, and he recognized me. Like, no BS, he recognized me. So
from a bar in Regina?
No, from like just Googling and checking out like charts of what DJs were playing. So he was like, like, I check out your charts often. Like, I'm a DJ too, and like I kind of like follow you a little bit. And I was like, my mind was like blown at the time.
And let's remember, there's no Twitter, maybe Twitter, but there's no Instagram, there's no Facebook.
No, there was no Twitter. There was no Twitter.
So this
is 2004. 2004, maybe 2005.
He's following you on your basic website.
Just on a website. That's it.
Crazy.
So he must have Googled like, you know, whatever. And at the time he was a fairly prominent DJ in Edmonton, but he was transitioning kind of from DJ to more of like sales rep. So he was really into like the products and selling and understanding speakers and helping the DJ community, saying like, hey, you need these turntables and these speakers and things like that. So he knew a lot.
You give him a shout out if you want to give him a shout out.
Yeah. His name's Clayton. Clayton Hubick went by DJ Clayboy. Now he's a rep for Ericsson Pro and Jam Industries. So he sells all kinds of stuff, you know, Chauvet DJ lighting and all that kind of stuff. He's still a great friend to this day.
Crazy.
But this is one of my favorite stories ever to tell. He basically said, like, you want me to take you out and show you around town? I was like, well, it's my first day here. So like, absolutely, I would. Yeah. That would be amazing. So he picks me up, and I think in one night between like, I think he picked me up at like 7:30 or 8. And between the hours of like 8 and 2 a.m., I think we hit like 15 bars. And this is when like Rum Jungle before Empire Ballroom was in there.
Yes.
We went to like the Standard. We went to all these like so many
Ezzy's.
Yeah. Oh, we were everywhere. Yeah. We went to Reds. Like we literally hit and I was like so blown away that he knew all these people. But we just cut through all the lines and walked right into the DJ booth. So we didn't have to pay cover, didn't have to wait for lines. There was like obviously some free drinks flowing.
First night in Edmonton, you made it.
I was like, so like I'm trying to like hand out business cards or talk to these DJs and get their numbers to be like, I'm new in town. If you ever need a fill in, like call me, blah, 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 whatever. And pretty much within like a week of that, not like within a week or two of that, I was like DJing at some of the bars like right away, and it was like
crazy, wild.
I'll circle back to the other really important person that I had met, but it had just kind of like snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. So ended up kind of linking up with a guy named Nestor Delano, who's still like big in like the house scene, and he kind of brought me on his Wednesday night at like at the time probably the biggest club in Edmonton. So that was like wild. And ended up playing there lots. And then I did apply to work for a radio station there, and I'll get back to that story too. 91.7 The Bounce, which is now Kiss FM. Yes. And I applied there, and at the time it was a brand new station. It had just went on the air, but it was a hip hop station, and at the time that's what I was into. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. They play nothing but hip hop. So I applied, and I got on and just like, like setting up for remotes, like live on locations and things like that. But luckily enough, on the Fridays, I was able to, they did a live to air from the nightclub. And then on the Saturdays, they would do like a remote during the day. And then I could DJ Saturday night. But I ended up meeting like Harmon B and DJ Quake, who were like the biggest DJs in Edmonton at the time, and they did live on the air and massive. And I'm still friends with both of them to this day. And they're both still actively DJing and in the scene. But it was really cool to see, you know, that was the first time that I had really seen like, whoa, like this is what a DJ is and does. And it was good. Like I was Regina good, but I'd never really had anybody to really like blow me away.
Here's a question about DJing then versus DJing now. What's that scene like in terms of taking people under your wing? Because I can feel that's competitive, because sometimes they see you, right? And like, don't take my job. Don't take my job. Don't come in here. Yeah. This is my club. This is what I'm doing. But then you have the other guys who are like, hey, come check this out. Come check this out, right? So what was it like then versus today?
Yeah. Oh, and I think it depends on the person partially too. It depends where the DJ is in their career. I feel like a younger DJ would be like, hey, let's be friends because we're into the same things. A middle-aged DJ who is maybe like more like, hey, I got a really good gig and I'm getting paid well, might be a bit more standoffish. Gotcha. And then also a DJ who's maybe closer to the end of their DJ career is like, I got nothing left to prove. Come on, if you end up taking my job, whatever, like it's not a big deal, and just be a lot more honest than that. So
the Harmon B's, the Quakes kind of took you under their wing, right? Like, and said, hey, this is what the scene's like here. This is what happens.
Yeah, and I mean, you had to respect that they were really good at what they did, and they had the job already. So it wasn't like I was going to go into the club and be like, you should hire me. They were doing great, and I was really like, even in my head, I was like, even if I did take this job, I wouldn't do as good of a job as they would do. So you're like, okay, it's not my time, you know, yet. And they were DJing live on the air from the studio, like in studio for like the 6 o'clock shake and all these other kind of shows, which is a totally new thing that you could DJ on the radio. So when that light happened to me, I was like, what? You can be on the radio and be a DJ? It was like,
you're in radio school,
game changer for me. Oh,
you're DJing.
Kid in the candy store.
Let's bring the worlds together.
The Cool Jobs podcast is brought to you by Crown Jewel Recruitment.
Hi there, Mark Curtis, Managing Partner, Crown Jewel Recruitment. We are very excited to partner with the Cool Jobs podcast. A little bit about us. We specialize in mid to senior level management positions, all types of industries. We also have entry level all the way through to executive suite. If you'd like to learn more, please check out crownjewelrecruitment.com.
Like Cool Jobs Podcast on Facebook at Cool Jobs Podcast.
Yeah, so then like a week later, I'm starting NAIT, like actual radio school, and I meet 3 kind of really important people. So there's 4 semesters at NAIT. There's first semester, second semester, third semester, then the internship. So I'm in first semester. In second semester, ahead of me, I meet Matt Fossey, DJ Matt Fossey. We became great friends, still are to this day. His best friend at the time was Tom, DJ Twix. We're still friends to this day. And then the semester ahead of them, so third semester, is Robbie G, who was also working at the Bounce at the time, worked at Virgin for a bit, and then now is back working at Kiss FM with the Pepper and Dylan show. And he's had Virgin tattoos and Bounce tattoos on his body. Super dedicated radio guy, just an awesome, very creative mind. I have a ton of respect for that guy. And
so
he's definitely...
you 4 meet.
We meet, and then they basically, like, as a first semester, we basically say, okay, you're brand new. You get first pick at getting your own show on NR92, which is the radio station.
Okay.
And so I was like, well, this guy that I just saw is like DJing on the radio. So like, can we do that? Like in this little NAIT studio? So we talked to the current program director and they're like, yeah, we'll have to like wire in something for the turntables, but absolutely. So we hauled our gear up the flights of stairs at NAIT every Wednesday from 8 until 11 o'clock at night. So 3 hours. So usually like I would spin first, then Matt would spin, then Twix would spin, and we would do the 3 hours. And then Robbie G, he would be more of our host. And he was also really good at producing. So he produced like little splitters and things like that and interject them. And then at the time, we tried to we wanted to have the best view or best listen to show on NAIT. And they had some little stats internally that we would get shown. So believe it or not, when we weren't DJing, we were on Nexopia. So that was like pre-Facebook, MySpace.
Okay.
It's called Nexopia. I didn't even know about it until I moved to Edmonton. So I don't even think it was in Regina, but it was like a social media kind of like chat message board kind of thing, right?
Okay.
And so we're messaging like all these people in Edmonton to be like, here's the link to listen to our radio station. And we did get some really good viewership because we were kind of hustling on the side. And then obviously as time went on, everybody kind of went on to their own kind of radio careers and things like that. And met some of the TV people, which I still kind of chat with to this day. Natasha, who was on, Natasha Tanaschewski, who was on TSN for forever and ever. They just let her go. She was in the TV semester, same semester as Veronica Jubenville, who did CTV Saskatoon and then went on to Global or CTV Edmonton as well. Super awesome gal. So still kind of chat with them to a little degree.
So all through NAIT, you guys are doing the show at Wednesday nights, and then you're also still DJing on the weekends at these other. Did you ever get like a residency per se in Edmonton?
Yeah, so honestly, a lot of it was kind of fill-in stuff, but it was so like consistently filled in, I guess. So I ended up playing at places like the Armory and like the Blind Duck and like Bar Wild and like it was a ton of fill-in stuff, but I felt like it was so consistent. I wanted radio to be like, that's what I was going to see for. So if I had a job to do with the radio, that would come first, and then if I could fill in there. But I was pretty lucky, like between like Nestor Delano and Quake, and then I met Captain Ron. He's a legend in Edmonton. He's still doing big show promotions for Oiler games. He brought me onto a lot of his events and stuff like that too. I ended up going out to Red Deer and DJing some stuff out there. So cool. It was almost like my perfect scenario of make my own schedule type of thing.
Nice. Love it.
And then that was like the first year. And then they had this brand new casino open up in a brand new casino in Edmonton open up, the River Creek Casino. And right at the exact same time, they had this brand new nightclub called Fever Nightclub opening up. And they had kind of like a contest to be the resident DJ. And there was like, it wasn't like a public thing. It's like you kind of had to like be asked. And I think there was only like 3 of us or maybe 5 of us who were asked. And I remember they were
to do the tryout.
Yeah, they were physically building the club. And this story is connected in so many ways. My buddy Clayton's doing the sound and lighting install in this club. So it's like such a small world. And at that time, that was kind of like the time that I had just heard about DJ AM. And that's when like that's when like the mashup thing was like next, like everything was mashup, right? And at the time I was still kind of playing like hip hop, reggae, pop kind of stuff, right? So I did my trial and they were like, you did really good. But then after I got done, he brought me in this guy, Viet, who's like the head of Bodang now, like massive. And he's such an awesome guy. He kind of brings me into office because he was really up on like DJ culture. And to me, like I'm from small town, then Regina, brand new to Edmonton. All I know is the people I've met, right?
Exactly.
And he's like, check out this DJ AM guy. Here's a picture of him on the red carpet, like dating Nicole Richie and blah, 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 blah. And he played me a mix of his. And I was like, whoa, that guy's really good. Ended up going to like Calgary to see him play and all this kind of stuff. But I ended up not getting the residency at this Fever nightclub, which they were also proposing to do a live to air. So I was really chapped at that. That was my chance to kind of make it big. Anyways, they ended up going with this DJ named DJ Shocker, Sean. He's a really good guy. He's still actively DJing Edmonton. Really great guy.
Cool.
Tons of respect for him. So, he had, and obviously he's from Edmonton. He had put his time in the scene more than I had. So he was obviously the right fit for that job. So that was really cool to kind of see that develop. I ended up getting the job at the brand new River Creek Casino, and that was a big deal, like multi-million-dollar casino. And my signing,
I thought you were going to say multi-million-dollar contract.
No, I wish. But my signing bonus to go to this new spot, I guess, was a free trip to Vegas because the owners of this casino had big Vegas ties, and as their resident DJ, they wanted me to see what DJs in Vegas played like, so I could bring that flavor back to Edmonton. So they fly me out to Vegas for the weekend, it was crazy to see. Like Mark Levers was one of the guys that I remember, and Jason McIntosh and Brendan Crooks were the guys that were doing that. Mark Levers ended up opening round 1 in Edmonton and West Edmonton Mall. It's like that kind of like
first round.
Yeah. And so he was doing that, and And Jason McIntosh ended up kind of working with the hospitality group that ran like the Knoxvilles out of Calgary and Edmonton and things like that. So they're still actively in the scene too.
Crazy.
And so I see all these Vegas DJs playing again. No line, no cover, free drinks. I was like, I don't know, 24 at this point. Like, this is the best thing ever, right? So I go through that. I come back to the casino. It opens up. The first few months are really, 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 really good. And then it kind of starts to taper off.
What's it like DJing a casino? Because you're not, is that do they have a separate room for a club? Or
yeah, it's a bar.
Are you
No,
playing
it's a bar club inside.
Okay, so you're not playing to like the people that are on the slots?
Yeah, some casinos do that now to create vibe and atmosphere.
Right,
And we ended up doing that at Northern Lights in Prince Albert here, just on the floor, just to add some vibe, like pre-COVID.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But this was like something called an ultra lounge. So it was more of like a standing room only, felt like a bar, not really a dance floor, but it would eventually get to dancing. Very much a Vegas vibe, right?
Separate room from the actual gaming floor.
Yes, but never call it a nightclub, never call it a bar. Ultra lounge was kind of like the vibe, right?
Gotcha.
It was great for like 3 or 4 or 5 months, and then it really started to taper off. And I was coming to the end of my NAIT time and had to decide on my internship.
Right.
What do I do? Where do I go? And there were some people who were semesters ahead of me who had taken some of those internships at the Bounce at the time, who were also very talented. And so there wasn't really much room to do an internship at the Bounce because they could only take on so many interns at one time.
And that was your station because they're mixing live on the radio.
Yeah. And I was already working, like actively working for that station for the 2 years I was there. They're just like, we'd love to have you, but like we have these guys already on. So like, there's just no room, right? It's like, okay, no problem. So then I applied for my internship back at the Wolf in Regina, and they accepted it. So I kind of had to give up this kind of slightly glamorous life, if you want to call it that, in Edmonton, and come back to Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and okay, cool, right? And that was the most kind of challenging year or so of my life. So I'd moved from kind of the big city, had some good club gigs going on, some good radio stuff going on, had started to establish myself in the city, and then moved back to Regina, where when I had left, I was DJing like between about 4 nights a week at the biggest clubs and the busiest nights. I moved back 2 years later, and all my buddies had taken those spots, and there's no room for me. And it was just a purely a timing thing, right? So now I'm like DJing like,
hey guys, anytime, I'm in.
I'm DJing like little dive bars and just picking up what I can. But ultimately I need to be focusing on radio. So I did focus on radio, and I was doing the evening. So I was on air doing the evening shift at the Wolf for a year.
Cool.
But part of the reason why I, believe it or not, kind of got into radio is that right around the time I made the decision to get into radio, I heard a rumor from a friend that Harvard Broadcasting, which owns the Wolf, which is the station that I was working for, was eventually opening up a top 40 station in Regina. That was the rumor.
In Saskatoon?
No, in Regina.
In
Regina.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, cool. That I can get down with that. And I seen the website was up even like for a demo, because when they apply to the CRTC, you have to have some of these things in place, right?
Okay.
So they had it up. So I saw this kind of early mock-up of this website, and I was like, that's my jam. I'm going to take everything I learned in Edmonton at this almost same station, and I'm going to like apply it.
Blow up Regina.
And it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to love it, right? So I was like, okay, maybe this isn't the worst thing in the world, moving kind of back a step, in my opinion, to Regina. I'm like, I'm just going to put my head down and work for like a solid year plus, and just let them know that if this ever happens, I'm very, very, very interested in doing that, right? So do that, and then the call finally comes. I remember meeting with Carly, who was our former boss, in the Harvard studios, because she had got hired from CBC in Regina, and she's like, no, it's actually in Edmonton, or in Saskatoon. I was like, oh, okay, well, I've never lived in that city, and sure. Because it was always a big, growing up as a kid, like my parents listened to 620 CKRM, and that was an oldie station. Like we're talking like Elvis and the Beatles, and I remember listening to all that stuff on the radio
for sure
as a kid. But my problem was when I got to be, 17, 18, 19, there was no music for me, my generation, who still listened to radio, but there was no, pop music that I would like on the radio, right?
Classic rock is an option, oldies, country, and
80s. Like,
you're like, where's the hip hop on FM.
Just pop. At this point, at 2000s, like, give me some Baja Men or some Crazy Town. I'm happy, but like none of that was being played. It was always like a mix of 80s and 90s and whatever it was called. And I was like, I need to fix this, not knowing you have to apply to the CRTC and have like
millions in the bank.
Who am I to change this, right? So when this opportunity came up, I was like, yeah, this is awesome. So then my next meeting was with Carly and Chris in the Harvard studios in Regina. And they're like, yeah, like, we see what you've done. We have a passion, all this kind of stuff. And I'm unless they were BSing me, I was basically the third person hired at the station.
Crazy.
So one of their, not having maybe a ton of experience, but being a key member
for sure.
Of all of this was a big thing for them. And then obviously they started to assemble, the team and not knowing where everybody's background was, including yourself and Mark and Blake and Trouble. And then eventually, into the other Mark and the riders and all that kind of stuff.
I want to say when that station got built, it was wired 96.3 in Saskatoon. It was like the Mighty Ducks of people.
Yeah,
just picked from all these other weird stations that they came from, and it was like we all got together. I still remember that first night actually that we all met in Carly's basement, and we all stood around and like, who are you? Who are you? What's going on? And then I'll never forget. You're like, I'm DJing tonight at the Pat. You guys should all come down. And I was like, I haven't been to the Pat in years. What? Who is this guy? And of course,
and then the weird part because they had hired me. We were supposed to be on air for Wired like 8 months before the station actually went on air.
Right.
So I was up there like 6 to 8 months before we actually went on the air. So in that time, my sister,
you're cold calling bars.
Yeah, kind of. My sister had worked for the Pat, and I was like, well, I'm in Saskatoon now. Like, hook me up with somebody. Like, I need money because I'm moving up here, and Harvard was still paying me, but it's like, well, if we're not really doing anything, I need money on the weekends, right? So I pretty much cold called this person that my sister said, and they're like, yeah, sounds good, we'll get you on. They had a couple of good DJs on already, so shouts out to Mark Eclectic. I'm still friends with him to this day.
Cool.
He kind of let me hang out with him and shadow him, and then he kind of moved on to the Hose Hydrant in Saskatoon, so I kind of maybe got grandfathered into that a little bit. Ended up taking over there, and then I had been telling everybody, hey, I got hired for this new radio station, but I can't tell you what it's called or what format it is or when it's launching or anything. And they're like, okay, well, we'll take a chance on you. And then everyone else started coming up, and we had met, and then, started hanging out and going to the Pat, and then developed, friendships until finally we get on the air, right?
Yeah. So how many places did you DJ at in Saskatoon then?
At the time?
Yeah, you're at the Pat.
I was mainly just at... Yeah, when I moved there, I was just at the Pat Saturdays and Sundays, and they did Sunday long weekend, so that was kind of good enough for me. I did some odd Fridays at like a Bailey's or an Alley Cats or a Sutherland or something like that to fill in. But I did about 8 years there, a small little stint at Overdrive before it turned to Outlaws, and then like 8 years at the Sutherland as well. So I was pretty much Pat Sutherland were like my two long-term kind of gigs.
I guess long story short, Wired is not doing so well down the road. People have moved away, morning shows, etc., other talent, PDs, everything. They decide to flip the format. They come in. That must have been. They come in, I think all you got, like the whole staff, basically in a room, right, and say you're done.
No. So
was it? I thought it was like a mass thing.
No. So from my experience that I remember, probably because I like blacked out or blocked it out of my memory because at the time it was so traumatic.
Are you okay talking about it?
Oh no, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because we'll skip over the whole name change and lawsuit thing. We'll leave that one out of it. But I basically came in one day I came in at 10 a.m. Because I was doing either middays or drive. At that time, I would have been doing drive, and I would do the music director stuff from 10 till 1, and then be on the air from 2 to 6 kind of thing. And basically got called into the PD's office, pretty much got handed a brown envelope with my severance, and was like,
crazy.
We're flipping formats. They're like, if you want to kind of finish your day out, we're pretty much like...
If you want to finish your day out, you're just... What? No, peace, I'm out.
Yeah, and then some people did, and they were like, it was pretty much that...
Oh, man.
Yeah, so a few people did, because then they were like, you can play whatever you want, right? Because radio is so formatted, right? Like, top of the hour is an A and da-da-da. And it was like all those songs that we couldn't play due to formatting reasons. It was just like we were playing Drake and blah, 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 whatever. And I was listening, just out of curiosity. It was kind of cool to look back to it now.
Yeah.
But at the moment, worst day of my life.
For sure.
Looking back, I'm about 10 or 12 years out now. Best thing that's ever happened to me by far.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you walk, you leave. I guess that's where now this is the big shift here for you, right? Armed with Harmony is in the back of your mind. You go home, you tell your wife. Did you have kids at the time?
Oh yeah. So within it's basically, I kind of tell the story. It's within about a 12-month window, pretty much. Within this 12-month or 1 year window, pretty much was the tail end of kind of a lawsuit that I had to do for a name change. Okay. Which kind of spilled over into my father passing away, into getting married, buying a house, and getting pregnant and having our first child on the way. That was all in a 12-month window. So,
and being let go from Wired.
Yeah, yes, at the same time. So wow. It was a pretty kind of intense time in my life, and so when I got let go of radio, I was like, okay, your natural reaction is, okay, what station am I going to next, right? So
and in Saskatoon, there's only a handful.
Yeah, so it was like, do I stay in Saskatoon? Initial reaction is like, I'll move wherever because I'm used to radio. Let's move because Regina, Edmonton, Saskatoon. Let's move again.
You got ties. Yeah. Okay.
But now it's like, ooh, I got a wife and a house and a kid. It's not just that easy just to pick up and go, right?
Right.
So, applied in Edmonton at Virgin, Winnipeg at Virgin, I think Craze and Red Deer, a few other stations that I liked the format of, and got quite far on interview process on a lot of them. And then just kind of boiled down to the money thing just didn't really work. And what we were wanting to do with our life was just didn't work. And at the time, the DJing thing was going really good because being a personality on the air, the side hustle phone calls for gigs and bars and friends, weddings and things that was off the charts. So about 2 or 3 years before my time in radio came to an end, I was like, I can't keep up with all these gigs. So I brought DJ friends of mine on with me, not thinking from a company or business level, just thinking I want to help bar owners or friends out. Yeah, can you help me out? Here's what it pays. Give me X number of dollars as a finder's fee. I'll manage it for you. Just show up, play. Here's what you do, right? And just kind of evolved. And then I had, 3 to 5 DJs who I'd call and help fill gigs. And then the radio came to an end and I was like, I think I can kind of maybe give this a shot. So started, kept the brand, which is Armed with Harmony, as you see here. Yeah. That was the name of the NAIT radio show. So it was called Armed with Harmony Radio. So that was me and Matt and Tommy and Robbie. So I basically took that name and slapped it on a business, I guess. I chatted with the guys. I'm like, you mind if I use this?
I was going to say, was there any backlash to that?
No, they were good with it. And and then just started calling a few more of my friends. Hey, I think I'm going to try and do this full time. So then it just kind of evolved into let's buy more speakers and this and that, and get a website and get.
Give me the background on the support. You tell your wife, I'm going to go full-time DJ. I'm doing this. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay the mortgage, playing music.
Yeah, I think.
Was it an easy conversation?
It wasn't an easy conversation.
Okay.
I think she knew that I had a huge passion for it, and knew that if I set my mind to something, that it would hopefully be successful.
Right.
Or if it wasn't, it wouldn't be due to my lack of effort or things like that. I think my wife's father at the time, who was a mechanic, a very work with my hands kind of guy, was I don't know what this guy's doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think even my parents at the time were like her. So I guess my mom at the time was you want to support your kids, but I think she's okay, let's the classic, let's give it 6 months. If it doesn't work, go get a real job kind of thing. Right. And fast forward 20 years in the industry, I haven't had to have a real job. It's just kind of spiraled from there. But
so tell us about Armed with Harmony. So you grew it. How many DJs when you're obviously COVID? I know things happen and layoffs happen and everything's happening there. But pre-COVID, just let's say right before COVID, how many DJs working for you? How many gigs are you guys doing? Tell us tell me what a day looks like for you with all that at the same time. So
I think at our peak, pre-COVID, we were sitting around 15 to 20 DJs was like not out of the question.
Wow.
And that would be for, weddings, school dances, corporate Christmas parties, bars, nightclubs, pubs, that kind of thing. So it was very much built off a DJ company because that's what I am. And that's what I knew. Yeah. Right. And then luckily we were able to get, through radio, I was able to network my way to some bigger events. So some of the college events like the mock weddings and ag bag drags. And I think even during my time in radio, Prairie Land would hire me for their big New Year's party, which was like a big deal. They had a band and 4,000 people.
Wow.
So I kind of was able to be a bit on a pedestal, I guess, if you will, for like some higher echelon gigs. But what really was the caveat is that those gigs eventually turned into needing bigger sound, bigger lighting, bigger video. And I was then able to buy the equipment that needed to keep those clients as my clients and to say, hey, let's yes, I'm a DJ, but you need this and this. So we just ended up, buying more equipment and buying more equipment and buying more equipment and buying more equipment. And then it turned into like, okay, we're do DJs, but now our brides want photo booths. So now we're adding on a photo booth fleet. And then now like pre-COVID, our clients were like, oh, we can't gather events. We need something else. So we have like an outdoor inflatable movie screen division now. And then we have like an audio visual, like rental division.
Wow.
But it wasn't because I wanted to, it was necessarily because like, this is what my clients are asking of me.
Right.
And I don't want to disappoint them. I want to fulfill their needs. And then like one day you just kind of look back, you're like, I got a lot of gear here.
Wow.
So, but that's kind of what it's boiled down to now. So, I mean, now we have like fleet vehicles and warehouse space and sea cans and, event planning software, all these things that I never in my wildest dreams would be like wanting, but it's like, it's a necessity.
You were just happy to show up to play at the club.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and yeah, so it's cool. And then, I mean, now like it's been about 8 years as well. So, shortly on, I started also teaching a free DJ school.
Cool.
And that's been super rewarding. That's like something I look forward to. I do it twice a year, but I super look forward to that. I love to meet new people. I love to pass on what I know.
Yeah.
And I also like to tell people like, don't do this. That's a waste of time. Or like focus on this and you'll see results, more often. And I have a ton of, respect for those guys who have went through the program and then went on to, pursue something, pursue their dreams. And there's, some DJs who are doing some pretty cool things who've taken my courses now. And I just admire that because there was no YouTube in my day from places to learn.
Right.
There was, and even with YouTube now it's great, but like to get real time interaction, like push this button, don't do that, do this, to give them the feedback, not only from a DJ perspective, but a radio and a company and a production standpoint is really cool, and I think they appreciate that too.
2019, that's pre-COVID. How many events did you guys do that year, roughly?
Pre-COVID we do about 2,000 events a year, which is kind of wild.
Come on,
2,000? Because some, there's also sometimes like some of the clubs we did were 365 days a year.
Every night.
Right there, there's 365 events, right? And then you throw on, weddings, or you throw on rental. Well, rentals wouldn't be in that, but you throw on weddings, you throw on other clubs, corporate Christmas parties, school dances, that kind of stuff. Like it starts to add up, pretty quickly. So I do have a full-time general manager to help me with that. And you were with me for, a period of time too, just to kind of see like
crazy
from an organizational office standpoint. And I always need good people like, graphic design people and photo and video editing people and just creative spirits in general, just to really help move the needle. Right.
I'm guessing though, like weddings, probably the main driver of revenue.
Yeah,
pre-COVID.
Yeah, that would definitely be like the bread and butter and what we're probably known for most as a company. So
let's talk weddings. You don't have to give names. Something that happened at a wedding and you're like, this should not be happening at this wedding.
Well, I do know of a wedding that I actually DJ'd it, so I kind of feel bad. But when I showed up, it was like at a place called Skull Ranch, which I didn't know.
Okay.
This is early. This is like really like one of like the first weddings I'd done after radio. So we're talking like 12 years ago. And they said, yeah, this is on this acreage or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, cool. Like I thought I asked all the right questions. And I show up at this place called Skull Ranch. And all the groomsmen have like skulls on the back of their like shirts, and like they're all like pretty beefy dudes. Fast forward to later in the night, I found out like they all, like, I think 3 out of 4 of them did time. Time. Anyways, they ended up getting it annulled, the wedding annulled the next day.
Come on.
Yeah, I was like, wow, okay.
Did they at least pay? They paid?
They did. They paid. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
For sure. Yeah, and I've seen a bride full on fist fight her bridesmaid at the end of the night, but like luckily almost nobody was there, but they full on like fist fighted, and then for fist fought, and then their venue was kind of just outside of town, and after they fought, they basically just had to wait. There was no Uber at the time. They literally had to wait for a cab to show up to drive them in separate vehicles. So it was kind of awkward as I was taking equipment down.
Yeah, taking equipment down. You're like, did you break it up?
Oh, there was like a few, like there was like a couple of parents there, so they were kind of like got it, but they were like in the kitchen, like packing up the late lunch. So like the fight like went on for like a little while before somebody got there. But I'm like, this isn't my place.
That's a good question. You said late lunch. Okay, best wedding supper, because do you get fed when you do a wedding?
Yes, yeah, typically. Yeah, okay. Typically.
So what's the best meal?
A lot of the plated meals are really good. The best meal was also equally the worst meal, and I'll tell you why.
No way.
We are I'm DJing in Hafford, Saskatchewan, where the street signs are in Ukrainian, and they have 4 different lines for different kinds of pierogies. Unbelievable. But they have like Grandma Betty there, and she's monitoring how many pierogies you can take because there's a limit. So it was like being at Disneyland, but with handcuffs on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, best night lunch at a wedding.
Those have come a long way. Like back in the day, it was just like buns and cold cuts, pickles and cheese,
pickles and cheese, call it a day.
Which is still good, right? But
who doesn't like a bunwich after like 8 Bud Lights? You know, you're grooving to Macarena, whatever, and I want a bunwich.
Yeah, it's all good. A lot of people are like poutine and taco bars are like been really popular. So you kind of make so there's like fries and gravy, but then there's like all these toppings, or there's like a little mini taco bar, and you can kind of pick all these kind of things too. So I'm glad you brought up Macarena though, because it's funny because it's the wedding like music has changed so much. I felt like for a long time.
I was just going to dive into wedding music. It
was very much like a lot of, I wouldn't even say cliche, a lot of cheesy things like polkas, waltzes, which is cultural, so I get that. But a lot of polkas, waltzes in Saskatchewan, and then chicken dance, YMCA, Macarena, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
We don't see a lot of that anymore, just because the brides are getting younger.
The music has changed.
And it's not cool, right? So, like, we're getting, like, brides who are wanting to hear, like, WAP and stuff like that. And you're like, I don't know if Grandma Betty would love that, but, like, hey, it's your wedding. Like, you know, we'll play it for you. But, you know, you just ask the right questions, and every client's a bit different. Every situation's a little bit different. But
so what happens in that situation? You're DJing, because I think I saw your list. It's a very extensive what a bride and groom have to fill out. Music they want, songs, must play songs, do not play songs, all that kind of stuff. It's very extensive what you go through. And like, good on you for doing that research and homework, because otherwise it could just be a total mess for the night, right?
It's setting up our clients and myself or our team of DJs for success, right?
Exactly. But what happens in that situation where Grandma Betty comes up and wants the bird dance, and it's on the do not play list from the bride herself, and you're like, and you don't want to be rude to Grandma.
We gotta break Grandma Betty's heart and you know, just politely, right? You know, say, hey, Grandma, just so you know, like, we've sat down with the couple ahead of time and asked them, you know, things they would like to, you know, see on their day, and that could be from decor to food to whatever. And they just specifically asked us, you know, that they don't want that song. We hope you can respect their wishes, but if there's something else you would like to hear, can we get on, you know, an Anne Murray or an Elvis or something for you like that? And usually most people will, you know, respect that. And I tell people, if they come in hot, expect hot back. If you come in and be like, hey, I'd really like the bird dance, it's like, okay, well, here's kind of why, you know, we can or can't do it. And some clients will say, none of the bird dance stuff unless it's specifically requested, and then they know we're not just playing it to play it, because to be honest, for the most part, we don't want to play that stuff either, right? Like,
yeah. You're moving. It's a new generation of music that's happening at weddings right now. It's a total change. With music, what is the weirdest song you've ever played at a wedding?
Oh my goodness, weirdest song.
Or you're like, I cannot believe I'm playing this right now.
Yeah, well, there has been a few times. It was actually at that Skull Ranch wedding where the bride's dad was a bit kind of estranged from her, but he played in a band, and he had come kind of back for the wedding. I don't think things maybe were good from a family perspective, but he was in a band, and he really wanted me to play his CD. So at the time, luckily, my MacBook had a CD slot on it.
Okay.
So I was able to rip that CD real time and then put that song into Serato and actually play the song from his band. Nobody really knew it, but it was kind of like, it was just weird for me, because it's like, am I promoting your band? Like, no one's going to dance to this, really. Like,
right.
You know, it was a little bit weird from that front. But yeah, I think there's always like that controversial song of the time. Like there was like even we DJ'd Calgary Stampede this past summer. That's obviously a bit of a no holds barred facility, but it's still a corporate brand of Stampede. You know, there was a song called Dick Down in Dallas. It's like, is that appropriate? But like it's sung so beautifully, but it still has vulgar lyrics in it. And I was like, is that appropriate for what scenario, right?
Yeah,
so
no, oh, crazy. Okay, so take us to the future now. What's Armed with Harmony? Obviously, let's hopefully get out of this COVID. Let's, that's
find a cure.
Let's get through that. But let's say COVID's done, and what's next? What's happening back to the full scene? Are you going to go bigger? You want to go more shows, more bigger production, or do you want to just kind of keep where you're at right now?
Yeah, I think I've been very aspirational throughout my career. I think currently, I guess where I was pre-COVID hitting, I was in a really comfortable place, and I know sometimes comfortability and complacency is the kiss of death.
Right.
But I've also learned that bigger isn't always better. And there are some great companies in Saskatoon who do segments of what we do.
Okay.
So, there's companies that, just do wedding DJs. There's companies who just do event production. And because we do quite a bit, DJs, photo booths, event production, outdoor movies, things like that, because we're already quite diverse, I'm pretty happy with where we are right now. I'm always open to new technology or ideas and suggestions. Streaming is something that we have obviously, been doing a lot more of.
Right.
But I think as far as expanding what we offer as a company, I think we're in a good spot where I have a really good handle on all the things that we do. We have a good team of people who can do specific things or are well-rounded. So as far as growing or getting bigger, I'm really happy with where I'm at. I have 3 girls that are 5, 7, and 9 right now. So, focusing, some time on them. I know it's crazy.
So
she's almost 10, right? So
you're doing all this and you have 3 girls. Where's the work-life balance in your life? Holy cow.
Try. Oh, and I also play 40 rec hockey games a year. I'm also on the community association for my Stonebridge local area. And I do a few other things. I like to fish, and I like to fish and camp in my spare time.
That was on my sheet. What's your fun time? What do you?
Here's the questions.
But where do you fit it in? Where do you fit it in? Come on.
Yeah. So I just try.
Your busy time though is probably what, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's the main busy time. Yeah. And that's the go-to time. That's the show time.
Yeah. So I think what people don't understand is I do my best to kind of work in the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I do obviously have to meet clients who maybe work a 9 to 5 outside of those hours in the evenings, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening, because they have a day job, and that's mainly our wedding clients. And then our event facilitation time is mostly heavily on Saturdays, but for sure Friday comes kind of maybe a close second, and then Thursday, Sunday, depending on long weekends, is sometimes a spill off on that. So I try not to do as many events, obviously having a family and things like that, because then I'm working 7 days a week. So I try to more from an office level set my team up for success with my experience by planning the events from an event details and logistics standpoint. Also from like a gear preparation list, a financial list, a payroll list, all that kind of stuff. So I try and get all the pieces of the puzzle ready, and then not like it's an easy job because I've done it for years, but it's just up to my team to facilitate that. So hopefully the tools that I've given them. Yeah. So they need to execute. And I, if looking back at, some of the early events I did as an individual DJ, if I would have known all the right questions to ask or been privy with extra information, I would have been able to do my job that much better. So I feel like me giving my team like, hey, here's this piece of information, here's this piece of information, it's going to make, it more, more concise, but it's going to yield better results, not only for our clients, but our staff will be like, hey, that was enjoyable, because special events can go sideways in a hurry if they're not planned properly.
Oh my gosh. You forget one thing and it's like, where's this? And day of, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Game over. Man.
Yeah.
You have a crazy life. You have one crazy life.
It's busy. Yeah.
Did you ever think you would get to when you started DJing and with the even at Wired when you're getting busy with a few? Did you ever think it's going to grow to what it is today?
I don't even think I even believe it to this day. And I actually had this conversation today. So my wife was actually chatting with an old college friend of ours. And
quickly, before you answer that question, is she involved on a day-to-day with Armed with Harmony, or how does that work?
Great question. So she was she is and was a French teacher. She taught for 10 years.
Okay.
Took about 7 years off to raise kids. Went back for a year during COVID because it was a really 2020 was a really 2020 was a really kind of uncertain year. So she kind of went back teaching just because we weren't sure what was fully going to get locked down.
Right.
And then she chose not to go back this school year. So she's always kind of actively been a part of the company. Does a lot of the books and finances and stuff. But it's tough because people say, oh, are you actively involved in the company? I think just picking up after me, just keeping my head on and keeping me fed and watered and just being supportive, I think is a ton that I can ask, because if I can't be there for kids' activities, it all falls on her. So, I do my best. So, is she super duper active in the company? Not as a full time, but she's got more than enough duties to
she sees the receipts when the new speakers come in. When the
yeah. And I told her, I'm like, now you're like the director of fun. So I'm too busy doing the work. So if we want to plan a family vacation or things like that, I'm like, I'm working hard. I'm quote unquote making the money. I want her to plan that. And you know how it is, booking flights and hotels and organizing kids' activities on the weekend and filling out things and parent-teacher interviews. That stuff never ends. So between helping me out when I need help or hit a panic button, she's always there for me, which is super, super awesome. But we work, we see each other every day. We work together all the time. So we spend a ton of time together, which is great because not a lot of couples can say that. And we haven't ripped each other's heads off. We're pretty, it's been good. It's been good. So
I guess what I was going to ask pre-COVID, when was the last time you had a weekend off?
Yeah, that was crazy.
You guys must have, in the DJ world, your Friday, Saturday especially, right? That's a whole day.
I don't think I had a Saturday off in almost 20 years.
That's crazy, hey?
Crazy. So I actually had my first New Year's off in 20 years was last New Year. Because there was it was fully locked
going
down.
into 2021.
Yeah, going into 2021. Yeah. And then I was supposed to DJ this New Year's for the Rush, for the Saskatchewan Rush lacrosse team.
Oh, yeah, that's one thing you never mentioned. You're also
we didn't even talk about that. We didn't even talk about that. But
okay,
I was supposed to DJ.
I'm going to have you back on episode 2 with DJ Anchor because what a crazy life you have.
So I was supposed to DJ there, and then it got canceled due to COVID. The NLL pulled that, so that was that. But yeah, I mean, I think the summary, even the Rush, has been an amazing opportunity. I think the cool part about this is in this industry in general, and I just kind of call it creative people working with sound, lighting, or video, and doing special events. That's the common bond between everybody in this industry. I've been fortunate enough to do it for 20 years, but I've never had one job. I've always had different jobs, and yes, I work for myself and for my own company, but every event is almost like a new job. So I never do the same thing over and over again, which I like. I couldn't do a 9 to 5. I'm not built that way. And I hate the word with a passion, entrepreneur. I despise that word. I don't know why. I more relate to either local business owner, because that's what I feel like I am.
Totally.
Or owner operator. That's That's like the truth. I'm not some revolutionary Instagram CEO or boss or whatever. It's like I call my people who work with me, and like they don't work for me. They're not like my employees. They're a team. I view it that way. And I'm trying to basically have my staff say, listen, if you can do sound, I can offer you this many hours a week. If you can do sound, lighting, video, now you can slide into these jobs. Because 20 years later, I'm doing a podcast or a vlog, with you. I'm doing the rush. I'm doing a wedding. I'm doing office admin. I'm doing construct. It's all related, but it's a million different jobs, and that's what I love about it. Because no day is like, I don't dread any day doing what I do. So,
man, awesome. I think we're going to wrap it there because that was a great way to finish it. Man, Trystan Meyers, DJ Anchor, you have one cool job. And thank you so much for being on the first episode of Cool Job Podcast. Really appreciate it, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
Okay, Cool Jobs Podcast brought to you by Mark Curtis and the crew over at Crown Jewel Recruitment. With over 200 people hired, Mark Curtis at Crown Jewel Recruitment will find the right people for you. You can contact him at 780-984-8800 or email mark@crownjewelrecruitment.com. Trystan, we'll see you later, man.
The Cool Jobs Podcast is brought to you by Crown Jewel Recruitment. Have a cool job or know someone that does? Let us know. Email jonny@cooljobspodcast.com.
You got me